My name is Jacqueline Reynolds, 28 years old, and I always dreamed my engagement party would be perfect. Instead, it became the night my mother shattered our relationship forever. While champagne glasses clinked and my fiancé Thomas smiled adoringly, my mother's voice cut through the celebration. Give your $45,000 wedding fund to your sister right now, or this engagement is off. The slap came next, spinning me into the wall. What nobody realized was that night would change everything. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from? Drop a like and subscribe if you've ever had family try to ruin your special moment. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Chicago, in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Two-story colonial white picket fence, blooming hydrangeas in spring. But inside those walls, there was always an invisible scoreboard tracking who was the favorite child. And it was never me. My parents, Margaret and Harold Reynolds, had two daughters. I was the firstborn, and my sister Natalie came along 3 years later. From the moment she arrived, she became the sun in our family solar system, and I was relegated to distant planet status. My mother doted on her, called her my precious angel, and made excuses for everything she did wrong. Natalie is more sensitive, my mother would say when my sister threw tantrums at family gatherings. Natalie needs extra help, she'd explain when my sister got poor grades while I was expected to maintain straight A's without any recognition. Natalie has a special artistic spirit, was the justification when my sister quit 3 different college programs while I worked 2 jobs to put myself through business school. My father Harold was physically present but emotionally absent. A financial analyst who spent most evenings buried in spreadsheets, he adopted a policy of non-interference in family matters. Your mother knows best, was his mantra, followed by a retreat behind his newspaper or computer screen whenever conflicts arose. His silence was approval of my mother's favoritism, and over time I stopped expecting him to stand up for me. Despite the imbalanced family dynamic, I was determined to create my own path. After graduating with honors in marketing, I landed an entry-level position at a digital marketing firm. Over 6 years, I worked my way up to marketing director, specializing in healthcare clients. Each promotion came with longer hours and greater responsibility, but also with the sweet taste of self-made success. As my career flourished, I lived frugally. While colleagues splurged on luxury apartments and weekend trips, I chose a modest 1-bedroom and drove a reliable but aging Honda. Every month, I put aside money in a special account I named Future Wedding, not because I was desperate to get married. Quite the opposite. I wanted the freedom to create a beautiful celebration on my own terms, whenever the right person came along. That fund represented independence from my parents' conditional support and years of careful planning. By my 26th birthday, I had saved $45,000. It was my security, my future, my tangible proof that I didn't need my family's approval or financial help to create the life I wanted. Then came Thomas Bennett. We met at a charity auction for children's art therapy. I was representing my company as a sponsor, and he was there supporting his mother's foundation. Thomas stood out immediately, not just because of his tall frame and warm smile, but because he actually bid on the children's artwork with genuine enthusiasm. I watched him win a lopsided clay sculpture for an absurdly high price, his face lighting up with victory. "That's quite a masterpiece you've acquired," I said when we ended up at the same drinks table. "Future Picasso, clearly," he replied carefully, wrapping the misshapen clay in tissue paper. "My mom runs art therapy programs, so I know how much courage it takes for these kids to share their work." That first conversation flowed effortlessly into dinner the following week, then weekend hikes, museum visits, and cooking disasters in my tiny kitchen. Thomas was an architect with his family's firm Bennett Design Group. Though he came from wealth, he had none of the entitlement I'd expected. He worked hard, lived relatively modestly, and valued experiences over possessions. Over our 2 years together, Thomas became not just my partner, but my sanctuary. With him, I never had to prove my worth or compete for attention. When I told him about my family dynamics, he listened without judgment, but made it clear he thought I deserved better treatment. "Families should build you up, not tear you down," he said simply. When Thomas proposed at the Art Institute of Chicago, exactly where we'd had our first official date, I wasn't just saying yes to him, but to the possibility of creating a new kind of family, one built on mutual respect and genuine love. The engagement ring was his grandmother's reset with a modern design. Something old, something new, he'd said, sliding it onto my finger. Just like us, traditional values with a fresh perspective. Planning our engagement party became our first major project together. Thomas's parents offered their lake house in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, a stunning property with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. His mother, Diana, insisted on hosting, waving away my concerns about imposing. "Your family now, Jacqueline," she said warmly. "Let us celebrate this properly." In the weeks leading up to the party, I noticed my mother's increasing coolness whenever wedding topics arose. She made pointed comments about the ring. "Oh, it's vintage. I thought perhaps Thomas couldn't afford something new," and questioned why we needed an engagement party at all. "It seems excessive for a first marriage." I brushed off her remarks, determined not to let her dampen my happiness. Thomas and I arrived at the lake house a day early to help with preparations. Diana had hired caterers, but wanted our input on final touches. We spent a pleasant afternoon arranging flowers and stringing lights across the expansive deck. "Your mother will love what we've done," Diana said as we stepped back to admire our work. The comment was innocent, but I felt a knot form in my stomach. "I hope so," I replied, not wanting to explain that my mother rarely loved anything I did. The tension multiplied when my family arrived. My mother swept in, air-kissing Diana while critically eyeing the decor. My father followed with a brief handshake for Thomas and an awkward pat on my shoulder. Natalie arrived last with her boyfriend Jackson, a man she'd been dating for only 4 months, but spoke about as if they were practically engaged themselves. "Jackie, the place looks interesting," Natalie said, using the childhood nickname she knew I disliked. "Very rustic chic. I guess Jackson's family has a house in the Hamptons with the most amazing interior designer." I caught her whispering to our mother repeatedly throughout the afternoon, both of them glancing in my direction during their hushed conversations. Something was brewing, but I pushed the worry aside. This was my engagement party, and I was determined to enjoy it. By 7 that evening, the lake house had transformed into a magical space. Fairy lights twinkled against the darkening sky, reflecting off the lake's surface like fallen stars. White roses and blue hydrangeas adorned every table, and soft jazz played in the background. Thomas's large extended family had arrived, aunts, uncles, cousins, all greeting me with genuine warmth. My closest friends from college and work came bearing gifts and excited hugs. Even my boss made an appearance, bringing an expensive bottle of champagne and sincere congratulations. "This is better than I imagined," Thomas whispered, squeezing my hand as we greeted guests together. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, one of countless small details I had come to love. The first hour unfolded perfectly. Servers circulated with champagne flutes and elegant appetizers. Laughter rose and fell around the room as people mingled. Diana had arranged photos of Thomas and me throughout our relationship, creating conversation starters for guests who hadn't met before. Even my father seemed to be enjoying himself, engaged in conversation with Thomas's uncle about fishing spots. Thomas's father, William, called for everyone's attention, raising his glass in the first toast of the evening. When Thomas was a boy, William began, his deep voice carrying easily through the room. He used to design elaborate homes with his building blocks. He'd spend hours getting every detail right, and if something wasn't perfect, he'd start all over again. That perfectionism made him an excellent architect, but it also made his mother and me wonder if he'd ever find someone who met his impossibly high standards. Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. Then came Jacqueline. William continued, his expression softening. And suddenly Thomas stopped looking for flaws and started seeing possibilities. That's when we knew she was special. He raised his glass higher. "To Thomas and Jacqueline, may you build a life together as sturdy and beautiful as one of Thomas's designs." "To Thomas and Jacqueline," echoed around us as glasses clinked. Thomas then took his turn, pulling me close to his side. "I never believed in the concept of soulmates," he said, looking directly at me rather than the crowd. "I thought it was mathematically improbable that out of billions of people there would be just one perfect match. But then I met Jacqueline, who challenges me intellectually, supports me emotionally, and makes me laugh until my sides hurt. Now I understand it's not about finding the one perfect person. It's about finding the person who makes you want to be better every day. He raised his glass. Thank you for saying yes, not just to marrying me, but to creating a future together. I blinked back tears as we shared a kiss that prompted applause from our guests. Over Thomas's shoulder, I caught sight of my mother's sour expression, a stark contrast to the celebration surrounding us. She stood with arms crossed, whispering something to my father, who nodded without looking in my direction. The moment was interrupted when Natalie grabbed my arm, pulling me aside near the kitchen entrance. "We need to talk," she said, her voice sharp, despite her attempt at a casual smile. "Can it wait? Thomas and I should really greet the Andersons who just arrived." "It's important," she insisted, tightening her grip. "Financial stuff." With a sigh, I excused myself from Thomas and followed Natalie into the quiet kitchen. She checked to make sure we were alone before turning to me with practiced puppy dog eyes. "Jackson and I are in a bit of trouble." She began, twisting a strand of hair around her finger, her telltale sign of manipulation since childhood. "The landlord raised our rent, and Jackson's startup isn't paying him regularly yet." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "We just need a little help, nothing major." She paused, watching my reaction. "Just like 5,000 to get through the next couple of months." I blinked, stunned by her audacity. "Natalie, this is my engagement party." I know, bad timing, but you have that big wedding fund, right? Mom mentioned it's like 40,000 or something. "You could totally spare 5." She spoke as if asking to borrow a sweater, not thousands of dollars. "It's 45,000, and no, I can't spare any of it. That money is allocated for our wedding and honeymoon." I kept my voice level. "Thomas and I have a budget and plans." Her face hardened instantly. "Wow, just wow. So selfish, Jackie. I'm your sister asking for help, and you're worried about fancy flower arrangements and cake toppers. This isn't about fancy anything, it's about boundaries. I worked for years to save that money." "Of course. St. Jacqueline works so hard." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "While some of us are struggling just to keep a roof over our heads." "You could get a full-time job instead of your part-time yoga instructor gig," I suggested, immediately regretting the words as her face flushed with anger. "You sound just like Dad. Everything's about money and conventional success for you people." She stormed out of the kitchen, making a beeline for our mother, who was now standing by the bar. I rejoined Thomas, forcing a smile as we continued greeting guests. But I couldn't help watching my mother and sister engaged in intense conversation, both occasionally glancing in my direction. "Everything okay?" Thomas asked, noticing my distraction. "Fine," I assured him, unwilling to bring family drama into our celebration. "Just Natalie being Natalie." The party continued with dinner served on the elegant patio overlooking the moonlit lake. Thomas's cousins shared embarrassing childhood stories that had everyone laughing. My college roommate Amanda gave a heartfelt toast about witnessing our relationship from its earliest days. Throughout it all, I tried to ignore the growing knot in my stomach as I watched my mother working the room, speaking quietly to various guests with concerned expressions. I caught fragments, too rushed and impulsive decision, and realized with horror that she was undermining my engagement to anyone who would listen. Diana, perceptive and kind, must have noticed my discomfort. She sat beside me during dessert, casually positioning herself between me and my mother's line of sight. "Families can be complicated," she said softly, not looking at me directly. "Just remember that after today, you're part of our family too, dear, and we're absolutely thrilled about that." Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't prevent the storm I sensed building. It was only a matter of time before it broke. The confrontation I'd been dreading all evening finally came during a brief moment alone. I had stepped into the kitchen to grab more water when my mother cornered me, her carefully maintained social smile dropping the instant we were out of guests' view. "This party is ridiculously showy," she said without preamble. "Diana Bennett might have money to throw around, but it makes our family look like poor relations. I hope you're not expecting this level of extravagance for the wedding." "Mom, the Bennetts wanted to host. They're being generous and welcoming." I tried keeping my tone neutral, knowing from experience that defensiveness only escalated her criticism. Generous, or showing off. She adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous habit when she was building to something bigger. Regardless, we need to discuss something important. Can it wait until tomorrow? Tonight is supposed to be a celebration. No, it cannot wait. Her voice took on the clipped quality that had made me tremble as a child. Your sister is in serious trouble. If this is about the $5,000 she already asked, the answer is no. My mother's eyes widened. 5,000, Jacqueline, your sister needs much more than that. Jackson left her with $40,000 in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, even took out a line of credit in her name. I felt my mouth open in shock. What? When did this happen? Last week. He cleaned out their joint account and disappeared. She's devastated, and now she's facing financial ruin. The bank is threatening to come after her assets. Sympathy flickered briefly, but caution quickly followed. My sister had a history of exaggerated crises, and my mother enabled them consistently. That's awful, but I don't understand what you expect me to do about it. My mother's expression hardened. Don't be obtuse, Jacqueline. Your wedding fund. You have $45,000 sitting in an account while your sister might have to declare bankruptcy. The request hung in the air between us. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the marble countertop. Mom, that money represents 6 years of saving. I lived in a tiny apartment, drove an old car, skipped vacations, all to build that fund. It's for my future with Thomas. And Natalie's future is just supposed to be destroyed. She's your sister. My mother's voice rose slightly. Family helps family in times of need. I agree, which is why I'd be happy to help her make a budget or look over her finances or even co-sign for a structured repayment plan. But I'm not giving her my entire wedding fund. So selfish, always thinking only of yourself. She shook her head in disgust. Your sister would do it for you in a heartbeat. No, she wouldn't, I said quietly but firmly. And you know that. The kitchen door swung open as Thomas entered, his smile faltering as he registered the tension. Everything all right in here? He asked, moving to stand beside me. My mother's face transformed instantly, social mask sliding back into place. Just a little family discussion, Thomas. Nothing to worry about. Actually, I said, finding strength in Thomas's presence, my mother is asking me to give Natalie my entire wedding fund. Apparently, her boyfriend left her with massive debt. Thomas's eyebrows rose, but his voice remained diplomatic. That's terrible about Natalie's situation, Mrs. Reynolds. But surely there are other solutions we could discuss, perhaps after the party. This can't wait, my mother said, the pleasant veneer cracking. And frankly, Thomas, this is a family matter. I'm going to be family very soon, he replied calmly. My mother's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. We'll see about that. The conversation was interrupted as more guests entered the kitchen looking for coffee. My mother grasped my arm tightly, leaning close to whisper, "Living room, 5 minutes, bring your checkbook." She swept out, leaving me trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jacqueline, Thomas said softly, we don't have to do this tonight. We can make an excuse, end the party early. I shook my head. No, I'm done letting her dictate terms. Let's just get this over with. 5 minutes later, we found my mother, father, and Natalie waiting in the living room. Several guests lingered nearby, sensing drama unfolding. Diana caught my eye from across the room, her expression concerned. Have you come to your senses? My mother demanded as we approached. I've made my decision, I replied. I'm not giving Natalie the money. You ungrateful, selfish girl. My mother's voice rose, drawing more attention. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I put myself through college. I built my own career. I saved my own money. We gave you life. We raised you. And this is how you repay us, by abandoning your sister in her time of need. Each word was louder than the last. Thomas tried intervening. Mrs. Reynolds, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Stay out of this, she snapped. This is between family. My father finally spoke, his voice weary. Jacqueline, please. Just help your sister. It would mean a lot to your mother. And what about what would mean a lot to me, Dad? Does that matter at all? Natalie stepped forward, tears streaming perfectly down her cheeks without disturbing her mascara. I don't know what I'll do, Jackie. They're going to take everything. Who exactly is they? I asked. The specific creditors. Have you spoken to a financial advisor? A lawyer? Don't interrogate her. My mother cut in. She's the victim here. The room had grown silent. Party conversation dying as guests pretended not to watch our family meltdown. Thomas's family looked mortified, his cousins exchanging uncomfortable glances. I'm sorry about your situation, Natalie, I said firmly, but my answer is still no. That's when my mother completely lost control. Her face contorted with rage as she stepped toward me. Give your $45,000 wedding fund to your sister right now or this engagement is off. The words exploded from her, echoing through the stunned room. You don't get to decide if my engagement is on or off, I replied, my voice somehow steady despite my racing heart. As long as you're my daughter, you will do as I say. Then maybe I don't want to be your daughter anymore. The slap came without warning, her hand connecting with my cheek with such force that I spun sideways, crashing into the wall. The sound seemed to reverberate through the entire house, followed by gasps from the guests. For a moment, everything froze, my cheek-burned eyes watering from the pain. Thomas immediately moved toward me, but I held up my hand, stopping him. Slowly, I straightened and turned to face my mother, who looked momentarily shocked by her own actions. I touched my fingertips to my stinging cheek, then looked her directly in the eyes. You're about to get a surprise you'll never forget. Is that a threat? She sputtered, attempting to regain control of the situation. No, it's a promise. Thomas's father, William, stepped into the room, his commanding presence immediately drawing all eyes. He had witnessed everything. I think, he said in the measured tone of someone accustomed to courtrooms, that's quite enough, Margaret. The absolute silence in the room was broken only by the sound of ice clinking in glasses and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. In that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. William Bennett moved through the room with the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades commanding attention in courtrooms and boardrooms. At 62, he had the fit build of a man who still played tennis twice weekly, and the bearing of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. His salt and pepper hair and tailored suit added to his distinguished presence as he positioned himself between me and my mother. Mrs. Reynolds, he said, his deep voice calm but firm. I need to make something absolutely clear. What just happened constitutes assault and battery under Wisconsin law. As a family law attorney with 40 years of experience, I can tell you that your actions have legal consequences. My mother's face paled. This is a private family matter. You have no right to interfere. When violence occurs in my home against someone I consider family, it becomes my concern. William's tone remained measured. Furthermore, this occurred in front of numerous witnesses. Thomas had moved to my side, gently examining my cheek, which had begun to redden and swell. Diana appeared with an ice pack wrapped in a kitchen towel, placing it carefully against my face. Are you all right, dear? She whispered, her eyes reflecting genuine concern. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The physical pain was nothing compared to the public humiliation, and the shattering realization that my mother's conditional love had finally shown its true limits. William continued addressing my mother. You have two choices, Margaret. You can leave my home immediately and quietly, or I can call the local police and file a formal report. You wouldn't dare, my mother hissed, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Try me. William's voice dropped lower. I've spent my career protecting people from exactly this kind of abuse. Murmurs rippled through the remaining guests. My boss looked horrified, while my college friends moved closer in silent support. Thomas's cousins, whom I just met hours earlier, were looking at my mother as if she were a dangerous animal that had suddenly appeared in their midst. This is ridiculous, my mother sputtered, turning to my father. Harold, say something. My father, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally stepped forward. But instead of the defense of my dignity I had long ago stopped hoping for, he offered only excuses. Margaret gets emotional sometimes, he said weakly to William. She didn't mean any harm. Jacqueline knows how much her mother loves her. That wasn't love, Thomas said quietly but firmly. And I won't stand by while Jacqueline is treated this way. Natalie, seeing the situation spinning beyond her control, tried a different approach. Jackie, please. Despite everything, we're still sisters. I really do need help. Then get it from someone who hasn't just watched you stand by while our mother assaulted me, I replied, finding my voice at last. William addressed my family collectively. I think it's best if you all leave now. Diana will arrange for your belongings to be sent to your hotel. This is outrageous, my mother exclaimed. Jacqueline, are you really going to let these people come between us? Family is forever. Family doesn't slap family across the face for not handing over their savings, I said, lowering the ice pack to meet her gaze directly. Family doesn't play favorites for 28 years. Family doesn't publicly humiliate each other. My mother's face hardened into the cold mask I recognized from childhood disappointments. If you choose these strangers over your own blood, don't bother coming home for Christmas. Or ever. That's enough, William interrupted. Thomas, please show them to the door. Thomas hesitated, looking to me for confirmation. I nodded slightly, and he moved toward my family, gesturing toward the entryway. I'll get your coats, he said firmly. My father looked torn, glancing between my mother and me. For a brief moment, I thought he might choose differently this time, might finally stand up for me. Instead, he sighed heavily and followed my mother, who was already storming toward the exit. Natalie lingered uncertainty written across her face. Jackie. Goodbye, Natalie, I said simply. After they left, an awkward silence descended on the remaining guests. Diana quickly took charge, announcing that the party would be ending early, and thanking everyone for coming. People began gathering their things, several stopping to offer quiet words of support or gentle hugs as they departed. Within 30 minutes, only Thomas's immediate family and my closest friends remained. I sat on the leather sofa, emotionally exhausted, as Thomas knelt beside me, still holding my hand. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I had no idea it would escalate like that. Neither did I admitted, although part of me has always known she was capable of it. William returned from seeing the last guests out. Jacqueline, if you want to press charges, I would fully support that decision. Thank you, but no, I said after a moment's consideration. I just want to move forward. Diana brought me a cup of tea, sitting beside me on the sofa. Family conflicts are painful, especially when they happen during what should be a happy occasion. But I want you to know that you have a place with us always. Thomas's younger sister, Emma, who had watched the whole scene unfold with wide eyes, finally spoke. For what it's worth, I think you were incredibly brave. I would have crumbled. I almost did, I admitted. As the night grew later, my friends reluctantly departed with promises to check in tomorrow. Thomas's family gave us space, retreating to other parts of the house, while Thomas and I remained in the living room talking in low voices about what had happened and what might come next. Do you regret getting engaged to someone with such a dysfunctional family? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. Thomas took my face gently in his hands, careful of my bruised cheek. Jacqueline, after what I witnessed tonight, I'm more certain than ever that I want to marry you. Your strength, your dignity in the face of that attack. You're extraordinary. And now I understand why. As the clock struck midnight, marking the end of what should have been one of the happiest days of our lives, I rested my head on Thomas's shoulder and allowed myself finally to cry. The morning after the disastrous engagement party, I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. It took a moment to remember I was in a guest room at the Bennett Lake House, and another moment for the events of the previous night to come crashing back. My cheeks still throbbed where my mother had struck me, and when I checked the mirror, I saw an ugly purplish bruise forming. My phone showed 17 missed calls from my mother, 12 from my father, and 23 text messages from Natalie. I silenced the device without reading any of them, unwilling to subject myself to more manipulation or guilt-tripping. Instead, I scrolled through the dozens of supportive messages from friends who had witnessed the confrontation. Their outrage and concern wrapped around me like a protective blanket. Just checking that you're okay, texted my friend Amanda. What your mom did was absolutely not normal or acceptable. Call me anytime, day or night. Your parents' behavior was appalling, wrote my colleague Jamie. You handled it with incredible grace. If you need time off work, I'll cover your projects. Downstairs, I found Diana in the kitchen preparing breakfast. She hugged me gently, careful of my bruised face. Thomas went for a run to clear his head, she explained. He was quite shaken by everything. I'm so sorry about the party, I began, but she waved away my apology. You have nothing to apologize for, dear. Nothing. We were joined by a family friend, Eliza, who had stayed overnight to help clean up. As we sipped coffee, she revealed something that made my stomach clench. I hate to be the bearer of more bad news, Eliza said hesitantly. But I overheard your sister talking to someone on the phone in the bathroom last night before everything happened. She was laughing about convincing you to hand over your wedding fund. What exactly did she say? I asked, dread pooling in my gut. Something about the debt being mostly made up and using the money for a trip to Bali with Jackson. She said your mother was in on the plan to guilt you into coughing up the cash. Eliza looked deeply uncomfortable. I wouldn't normally repeat private conversations, but after what your mother did to you... The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me given our history, but somehow it still did. The elaborate scheme, the fake tears, the calculated public confrontation, all designed to manipulate me into giving away my savings. Thomas returned from his run immediately, coming to my side. How are you feeling? Physically or emotionally? I attempted a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Both. My face hurts, my heart hurts more, and I just learned the whole debt crisis was largely fabricated. Natalie and my mother were planning to use my money for a luxury vacation. Thomas's expression darkened. I suspected something was off about their story. The timing was too convenient. William joined us for breakfast, bringing his laptop. I took the liberty of doing some research, he said, opening his computer. Jacqueline, take a look at this. He turned the screen to show a Facebook post from my mother dated 2 weeks earlier, visible to friends of friends, but not to me since I rarely use social media. The message read, tired of my eldest superior attitude. Time someone put her in her place. Just wait until the engagement party. Below were comments from family members I barely knew, encouraging her to stand your ground and don't let her get away with disrespecting you. She was planning this all along, I whispered, scrolling through screenshots William had collected. There were text messages he'd been forwarded from a mutual family friend, showing my mother discussing strategies to put Jacqueline in her place and make her share with her sister. The revelation broke something open inside me. I excused myself and retreated to the guest bathroom, where I finally allowed the full emotional breakdown I'd been suppressing. Thomas found me there 20 minutes later, sitting on the floor with my back against the bathtub, tears exhausted. I keep trying to understand, I told him as he sat beside me. Was I really such a terrible daughter that I deserved this? This isn't about you, he said firmly. It's about them, their jealousy, their need for control. Maybe we should postpone the wedding planning, I suggested. Give everything time to settle. Thomas took my hand. If that's what you want, I'll support it. But I don't want your family's actions to derail our happiness or our plans. I don't either, I admitted, but I need some time to process everything. When we returned downstairs, my phone was ringing again, this time with an unfamiliar number. It was a family friend calling to warn me that my mother was posting publicly about the incident, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter who had humiliated her at a pretentious engagement party. Thomas's mother overheard, and her usually gentle expression hardened. That's defamation, she said sharply. William, can anything be done? Legally, it's complicated, William replied. But I can certainly help draft a formal cease and desist letter. The day continued with more revelations and complications. Thomas's parents offered to help with our wedding expenses if needed, which I politely but firmly declined. My father sent a text blaming me for disrespecting your mother and causing a scene, confirming that he would always enable her behavior rather than protect me. By evening, I had dozens of supportive messages from friends and colleagues, but also disturbing ones from extended family members who had only heard my mother's distorted version of events. My Aunt Caroline, whom I'd always been close to, called to ask if I was having some kind of breakdown. Your mother says you've changed since meeting Thomas, she said cautiously. That his family is turning you against your own blood. Did she mention the part where she slapped me so hard I hit the wall? I asked quietly. A long pause followed. She said you were hysterical and she was trying to calm you down. I have witnesses, Aunt Caroline, dozens of them, and a bruise that's now turning an interesting shade of purple. Another pause. Oh, Jacqueline, I don't know what to say. You could try, I'm sorry that happened to you, or that's unacceptable behavior, I suggested. Of course it's unacceptable, she said quickly. It's hard to believe Margaret would do something like that. It was hard for me to believe too, I said, until it happened. After hanging up, I turned to Thomas. I need to make some decisions about how to handle this going forward. I can't just hope it will blow over. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, he promised. 100%. That night, as we prepared to return to our apartment in Chicago, William pulled me aside for a private conversation. Jacqueline, speaking both as a family law attorney and as someone who cares about your well-being, I want you to know your options. He outlined several possibilities: a restraining order, if my mother's behavior escalated further, pressing charges for the assault, though he acknowledged the challenges of pursuing that route, or simply establishing firm boundaries with clear consequences for violations. The legal route isn't always the most healing, he advised, but sometimes it's necessary for protection. Whatever you decide, document everything: the bruise, the social media posts, any communication. As Thomas and I drove back to Chicago that evening, the sunset casting long shadows across the interstate, I realized I was at a crossroads. The engagement party that should have been a celebration had instead become a line in the sand. On one side lay the dysfunctional family dynamics I had endured for 28 years. On the other, the possibility of building something healthier with Thomas. We don't have to decide everything tonight, Thomas said, seeming to read my thoughts as he reached for my hand across the console. Some decisions take time. I know, I replied, watching the fading light paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. But I think I've already made the most important one. What's that? I'm not going to let them hurt me anymore. The words felt like setting down a heavy burden I'd carried too long. Whatever that takes. As we crossed the state line into Illinois, I felt something shift inside me. Not healing, not yet, but the first step on a path that might eventually lead there. I took the following week off work, a decision supported by my understanding boss, who had witnessed the entire confrontation at the party. Thomas continued going to his office, but called multiple times each day to check on me. The space allowed me to process everything without the pressure of maintaining a professional facade while my world was imploding. On Tuesday morning, I made my first appointment with Dr. Lena Rivera, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Her office was a calm space with muted colors and comfortable furniture, nothing like the stereotypical couch and clipboard I had imagined. "Tell me why you're here," she said simply after we exchanged introductions. I touched my still visible bruise. My mother slapped me at my engagement party because I wouldn't give my sister my wedding savings. But that's just the culmination of a lifetime of, I don't even know what to call it. We'll find the right words together, Dr. Rivera assured me. For now, just tell me your story. Over the next hour, I shared more than I had intended. The years of favoritism, the constant criticism, the ways I had adapted by becoming self-sufficient and independent, which only seemed to anger my mother more. Dr. Rivera listened attentively occasionally, asking clarifying questions, but never rushing me or offering platitudes. "What you're describing," she said toward the end of our session, "has many hallmarks of narcissistic family dynamics. The golden child versus scapegoat pattern is particularly evident in your relationship with your sister." Scapegoat, I repeated, testing the word. That feels accurate. Understanding the patterns doesn't make them hurt less, she acknowledged, but it can help you recognize that this isn't about your worth as a person. It's about a dysfunctional system that needed you to play a certain role. I left with recommended reading and another appointment scheduled for Friday. That evening, I dove into research about narcissistic family systems, highlighting passages that felt like they were written specifically about my life. Thomas found me surrounded by books and printouts when he returned from work, learning the language for what happened to me. I explained, showing him a particularly relevant paragraph about how scapegoated children often become highly successful, but struggle with feeling inherently unworthy of love. On Wednesday, I drafted a detailed email to my parents and sister. Dr. Rivera had suggested clear boundaries would be essential moving forward, and I wanted to document my expectations in writing. After 6 revisions and Thomas's supportive feedback, I settled on: due to the events at my engagement party, I am taking a temporary break from contact with all of you. The physical assault, attempted financial manipulation, and subsequent blame shifting are unacceptable behaviors that I will no longer tolerate. If and when I am ready to consider rebuilding any relationship, it will require the following: a genuine acknowledgement of and apology for the harmful behaviors. 2. Evidence of efforts to understand why these behaviors are damaging therapy would be a good start. 3. A commitment to respectful treatment moving forward with clear consequences for boundary violations. Until then, please do not contact me. Come to my home or reach out to Thomas or his family. Any attempt to circumvent these boundaries will result in legal measures, including, but not limited to, a restraining order. This decision is painful, but necessary for my well-being. I hope someday we can establish a healthier relationship, but that responsibility begins with you acknowledging the harm caused. I sent the email Wednesday night and blocked their numbers on my phone immediately afterward, though I kept their emails unblocked to maintain a record of any communication. My mother's response came within minutes, a lengthy tirade accusing me of being dramatic, ungrateful, and influenced by Thomas's family. She threatened to disinherit me to tell all our relatives I had mental problems, and insisted I owed Natalie the money, because family takes care of family. My father's reply was shorter, but equally dismissive. Your mother is heartbroken by your accusations. When you're ready to apologize for the distress you've caused her, we'll welcome you back. Natalie didn't respond directly, but posted on social media about toxic people cutting off family who try to help them, and narcissists who can't see beyond their own needs. Several relatives commented with supportive emojis. Despite expecting these reactions, they still hurt. I spent Thursday in a fog of grief and anger, alternating between questioning my decision and feeling more certain than ever it was necessary. Thomas came home early with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and held me while I cried. They're never going to change, are they? I asked, already knowing the answer. People can change, he said carefully, but they have to want to, and they have to put in the work. Your email gave them that opportunity, which they immediately rejected. Yes, he acknowledged, but that's information too. Friday morning brought a new escalation. My mother showed up at our apartment unannounced while Thomas was at work. I heard her distinctive knock and checked the peephole before opening the door only as far as the security chain allowed. Jacqueline, this has gone on long enough, she said, her voice sickly sweet. Let's talk like adults. I made my boundaries clear in my email, I replied, heart pounding. Please respect them. Her expression darkened. Don't you dare talk to me about respect after what you've done. Let me in this instant. No, I said firmly. Please leave, or I'll call building security. She pounded on the door for another 5 minutes after I closed it, calling me names loudly enough that my neighbors must have heard. When she finally left, I was shaking so badly, I could barely call Thomas. That evening, he helped me install a security camera outside our apartment door, and we began discussing more comprehensive security measures. I felt simultaneously empowered by taking protective action, and sad that it was necessary. At my second therapy session, Dr. Rivera helped me process the week's events and develop strategies for handling potential future confrontations. She also suggested reconnecting with supportive people outside my immediate family. Toxic family systems often isolate you from potential allies, she explained. Now's the time to rebuild those connections. Taking her advice, I called my father's sister, Aunt Sophia, with whom I'd lost touch years earlier after my mother declared her a bad influence following a minor disagreement. To my surprise, Sophia was overjoyed to hear from me. Jacqueline, I've thought about you so often, but wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me after all this time. I'm sorry it's been so long, I said honestly. Things with Mom have always been complicated, but they've recently become much worse. Oh, honey, she sighed. I wish I could say I'm surprised. Your mother and I stopped speaking because I confronted her about how she treated you when you were just 13. She flew into a rage, accused me of trying to turn you against her, and banned me from family gatherings. The revelation stunned me. I never knew that. She told me you had said horrible things about our family and couldn't be trusted. Classic Margaret, Sophia said grimly. She's been doing this for decades, isolating people who see through her behavior, rewriting history, positioning herself as the victim. Over the next hour, Sophia shared family history I'd never known, patterns of maternal manipulation that stretched back generations, my grandmother's similar treatment of my mother, which explained but didn't excuse her behavior, and multiple relatives who had been excommunicated for challenging the established hierarchy. You're not the first to break free, Sophia assured me, but it takes tremendous courage. By the end of our conversation, we had plans to meet for lunch the following week. The connection to this long-lost part of my family felt like discovering a missing puzzle piece. The weekend brought another surprising development. Thomas's mother, Diana, organized an impromptu bridal shower with my closest friends, creating a beautiful afternoon tea at her downtown Chicago apartment. I know it's not traditional to have a shower before setting a wedding date, she said as she welcomed me, but I thought you could use a reminder of how many people love and support you. The thoughtful gesture brought tears to my eyes. As I looked around at the circle of women who had gathered, friends from college and work, Thomas's sister and female cousins, and even Aunt Sophia, who had driven in from Milwaukee, I realized I wasn't as alone as I had felt. During the shower, my friend Megan pulled me aside with news she'd heard through mutual connections. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I thought you should know. Natalie and Jackson broke up after he found out about the money scheme. Apparently, he was horrified that she tried to manipulate you at your engagement party. The information didn't bring the satisfaction I might have expected. Instead, I felt a complicated mixture of vindication and sadness for my sister, who remained trapped in the dysfunctional patterns our mother had created. Sunday evening, a delivery arrived at our apartment, an expensive crystal vase with a card from my mother. The message read simply, "Time to put this unfortunate incident behind us. Looking forward to helping plan your special day." No apology, no acknowledgement of harm, just an expectation that an expensive gift would erase the bruise that had only just faded from my face. Thomas watched silently as I repacked the vase in its box, taped it securely, and addressed it back to my parents' home with a note that read, "I meant what I said about boundaries. An apology and evidence of change would be welcome. Gifts as substitutes for accountability are not. Jacqueline." As I dropped the package at the UPS store Monday morning on my way back to work, I felt another small piece of the burden lift. Each boundary maintained, each act of self-respect, was building something new inside me. A foundation of self-worth that no one, not even my mother, could damage again. 6 months passed in a blur of healing, planning, and rebuilding. Thomas and I chose a September wedding date, selecting a stunning lakeside venue not far from where he had proposed. With each decision, flowers, music, menu, we prioritized what felt meaningful to us, rather than what would impress others or meet external expectations. True to my word, I used my own savings for the wedding, though we scaled back certain elements to create a more intimate celebration. The final budget came to $38,000, with $7,000 set aside for our honeymoon in Portugal. Thomas contributed equally to our shared expenses, but respected that using my own savings was important to my sense of independence and agency. My mother made multiple attempts to breach my boundaries over those months. She sent flying monkeys in the form of distant relatives calling to check on me while really gathering intelligence. She mailed wedding magazines with passive-aggressive notes. She even showed up at my office once, though security prevented her from reaching my floor after I had preemptively warned them about potential unwanted visitors. Each attempt strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. Weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Rivera helped me recognize manipulation tactics and respond appropriately instead of reactively. Thomas attended several sessions with me, learning how to support my healing without trying to fix everything. Perhaps the most significant development was reconnecting with extended family members who had been similarly ostracized by my mother over the years. Aunt Sophia introduced me to cousins I barely remembered, all of whom had stories eerily similar to mine. What had felt like a unique and personal failing, my inability to earn my mother's unconditional love, revealed itself as a predictable outcome of a systemic family dysfunction. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received a letter from my father. Unlike my mother's aggressive demands or Natalie's manipulative pleas, his message was quietly desperate. Jacqueline, I know I've failed you as a father. Your mother is who she is, and I've spent 30 years enabling her behavior because confrontation seemed too difficult. Watching her strike you at your engagement party was my wake-up call, though I reacted too late and too weakly. I've begun attending therapy myself to understand why I've been so passive in the face of harm to my own daughter. I don't expect forgiveness, nor am I asking to attend your wedding. I just wanted you to know that you were right to stand your ground, and I'm sorry I never taught you that by example. Dad. The letter left me conflicted. It was the closest thing to accountability I had received from any family member, yet it came so late and felt incomplete. After discussing it with Thomas and Dr. Rivera, I responded with a brief note. Thank you for your letter. Continued therapy sounds like a positive step. I'm not ready for direct contact, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. Jacqueline. 2 days before the wedding, as final preparations reached their peak intensity, my mother made one last desperate attempt. She called Thomas directly, having somehow obtained his private work number, sobbing that she was being cruelly excluded from her only daughter's wedding. Mrs. Reynolds, Thomas said calmly, Jacqueline has been clear about what would be required for rebuilding the relationship. Have you acknowledged the harm caused? Have you sought help to understand the patterns? Have you committed to respectful treatment moving forward? Her response was telling, I shouldn't have to jump through hoops to attend my own daughter's wedding. Those aren't hoops, Thomas replied. They're basic requirements for healthy relationships. He ended the call politely but firmly, immediately texting me about the interaction. Finally, our wedding day arrived. Clear skies, gentle September breeze, and the lake glistening in the background. Diana helped me prepare in the bridal suite, filling the role my mother might have in another reality. She fastened my grandmother's pearl necklace around my throat, tears glistening in her eyes. I know I'm not your mother, she said softly, but I am so proud to have you joining our family. My maid of honor, Amanda, adjusted my veil, while Thomas's sister Emma arranged my train. The absence of my mother and sister created an occasional pang, but it was overwhelmed by the genuine love filling the room. The ceremony itself was everything we had hoped for. Personal vows that made guests both laugh and cry, music that held special meaning for us, and an intimate gathering of 98 people who truly supported our union. Thomas's father, William, performed a reading about chosen family that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. When the officiant asked who gives this woman, Aunt Sophia stood. She gives herself with the blessing of those who truly love her. She declared, her voice strong and clear. 2 empty seats in the front row marked where my parents would have sat. The deliberate choice to leave them empty, rather than removing them entirely, acknowledged both the loss and my acceptance of it. During the reception, several guests placed single flowers on those seats, a gesture of solidarity that moved me deeply. Thomas's father gave a toast that skillfully avoided mentioning family drama, while emphasizing the importance of building relationships on mutual respect and genuine love. Family, he said, raising his glass, is defined not by blood, but by who shows up for you, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your joy, and who helps carry your sorrows. By that definition, everyone in this room is family to Thomas and Jacqueline. Later, during our first dance, Thomas pulled me close and whispered, Are you okay? I know today might bring up complicated feelings. I'm more than okay, I replied honestly. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be with exactly the right people. And it was true. The absence of toxic family members hadn't diminished our celebration. It had created space for more authentic connections. Diana dancing with my colleagues, William deep in conversation with my college friend's Aunt Sophia. sharing stories with Thomas's cousins. These were the new patterns, forming healthier and more nurturing than what had come before. As the reception wound down and we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I took a quiet moment alone on the venue's dock, watching the sunset paint the lake in vibrant oranges and pinks. The journey to this moment had been painful but necessary, filled with difficult choices and heartbreaking revelations. Yet standing there, I felt something I had rarely experienced growing up in my parents' home peace. Not perfect happiness or complete healing, those would take more time, but a settled certainty that I had chosen the right path. Family is built through love and respect, not obligation or blood. The true measure of family isn't genetic connection, but consistent care and boundaries honored. Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most beautiful beginnings, and standing your ground is the first step toward finding your true worth. When Thomas joined me on the dock taking my hand as the stars began appearing above us, I knew we were creating something my mother had never managed, despite her obsession with family loyalty, a genuinely loving foundation for the future. "Ready to go?" he asked. I took one last look at the celebration behind us. The twinkling lights, the laughing guests, the new constellation of relationships forming, and nodded. "More than ready," I replied. "This is just the beginning." Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure for your own well-being? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to create boundaries, even with family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who cannot see it clearly.